Jai Gurudev. Today we are joined by an esteemed officer of Vedic Dharma Sansthan and an expert from the art of living who will help us understand the profound spiritual meeting of Lord Ram and his brother Lakshman with Mata Shabri. This story, deeply rooted in the Ramayana, is both symbolic and rich with wisdom. Let us begin by understanding the context of this meeting. Can you tell us a little about the background of Mata Shabri and her significance in the Ramayana? Jai Gurudev, and thank you for having me. Mata Shabri's story is one of deep devotion and unwavering faith. She was a tribal woman who lived in the forest, and despite her humble and seemingly insignificant life, she played a crucial role in the epic Ramayana. Shabri is portrayed as an ardent devotee of Lord Ram. According to the Ramayana, Shabri spent many years in penance, waiting for the arrival of Ram. Even though her situation was one of poverty, what is most significant about her devotion is her pure heart. She symbolized complete surrender and dedication to the divine, living in an atmosphere of love and surrender. She didn't have much to offer, but she gave whatever she had with a pure heart. Mata Shabri is often seen as an embodiment of the ideal devotee, one who does not judge her worth based on material circumstances, but finds value in her devotion and love for the Lord. This is why her meeting with Lord Ram carries so much significance. It demonstrates that devotion is beyond social status or material wealth. Yes, from a spiritual perspective, Shabri's story teaches us about humility and complete surrender to the divine will. Her meeting with Ram also highlights a core message that is taught in many art of living courses, that true devotion comes from purity of heart, not external rituals. Shabri represents the soul that is simple, authentic, and eager for spiritual growth. This story inspires us to move beyond the external and connect with the deeper essence of our being. That's a beautiful insight. Could you walk us through the moment when Lord Ram and Lakshman met Mata Shabri, and what was the nature of their conversation? The meeting of Lord Ram and Lakshman with Mata Shabri is one of the most touching moments in the Ramayana. When Lord Ram, during his exile, entered the forest, he came across the hermitage of Shabari. She was overjoyed to see him and invited him to her humble abode. Shabri had, in her devotion, tasted the berries before offering them to Ram to ensure that they were sweet. Some versions describe how she even carefully tested the berries with her own mouth to make sure they were not bitter. This act might seem simple, but it reflects her deep love and care. It is important to note here that Ram, who is the embodiment of righteousness, dharma, accepted those berries despite their seemingly imperfect nature. In the eyes of the Lord, the devotion and love behind the offering were more significant than its outward form. As for the conversation, it was more of an exchange of heartfelt emotions. Shabri shared her years of devotion and a longing for the moment she could serve Ram. Ram, on the other hand, acknowledged her love and said that it was because of her devotion that he had come to her. This interaction teaches us that the Lord's presence is attracted not by external wealth or rituals, but by the purity of one's heart and the simplicity of one's offering. Yes, this moment is a great lesson in spirituality. Ram's acceptance of the berries represents the idea of love without expectation. In many of our teachings, we emphasize that service should be done with love and humility without concern for the material result. Shabri's devotion was not about the outward perfection of the offering, it was about the purity of intent, and Rama recognized that. This is something that we often work on in the art of living community, to do things with a pure heart, not seeking recognition, but only offering what we have in the moment. In fact, in many of our courses, we discuss how devotion can manifest in simple action, whether it is in our daily routines and duties or in the way we interact with others. These actions, when done with love and sincerity, become a form of spiritual practice. This is exactly what Shabri demonstrated when she served Lord Ram, not expecting anything in return, but giving out of pure devotion. That's profound. How did Lord Ram's response further deepen our understanding of the nature of devotion? Lord Ram's response to Shabari further exemplifies the value he placed on devotion over material offerings. He told Shabari that her devotion had already purified her and that he had come to her to honor that devotion. This moment is not just about Lord Ram meeting a devotee, it is about a spiritual message. The devotion is all that matters in the eyes of God. For Ram, there was no difference between a king and a tribal woman if the heart was pure and filled with love. In the Vedic and Upanishadic traditions, the concept of bhakti devotion is highlighted as the most direct path to union with the divine. Ram's meeting with Shabari is a living example of this principle. By accepting Shabari's berries and offering her his presence, Ram was essentially showing that no matter how humble or unworthy one may feel, the divine grace is available to all provided their hearts are in the right place. Exactly. And this story also ties into the principles of the sadhana practices in art of living. The essence of devotion in our teachings is the feeling of oneness with the divine, where every act, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, is performed as an offering to the higher self. The mind and emotions must align in a space of love and acceptance, just as Shabari's did. In fact, I often refer to this story in our meditation sessions, reminding participants that devotion isn't about grand gestures, but the simple act of doing what we do with love. When we offer something with a pure heart, it transforms our experiences, just as Shabari's devotion transformed her humble offering into something worthy of Lord Ram's acceptance. What can we learn from this story in terms of its application in our everyday lives, particularly in relation to devotion and humility? This story teaches us that humility is the cornerstone of true devotion. In our daily lives, we often get caught up in the expectations, desires, and judgments. But Shabri's life tells us that it is the simplest things, when done with pure intent, that truly matter in the eyes of the divine. Whether it's a prayer, a small act of kindness, or simply being present for someone, when done with love, it becomes an offering to the divine. The acceptance of Shabri's berries by Lord Ram is also a reminder that we don't need to be perfect to be worthy of God's love. Our imperfections and struggles are all part of the journey. What matters is our sincerity and our desire to connect with the divine. And this is something we also emphasize in our mindfulness practices. By being present in the moment and offering ourselves completely to whatever task we are engaged in, we are practicing devotion in every aspect of life. The teachings of Lord Ram and Shabri invite us to let go of judgments, to accept ourselves and others as they are, and to approach life with love and humility. In the Art of Living courses, we encourage people to connect with their higher selves and to perform all actions, whether they are mundane or spiritual, with love, joy, and devotion. This transforms not only the action itself but also the practitioner's inner state. Much like Shabri's simple act of offering berries transformed her life and earned her the blessing of Lord Ram. Thank you both for such a deep and insightful discussion. The meeting of Lord Ram, Lakshman, and Mata Shabri holds such timeless wisdom, and it's incredible to see how it resonates with both Vedic teachings and modern spiritual practices. I hope this conversation inspires all of us to approach our lives with greater devotion, humility, and love. Jai Gurudev, and thank you for having us. May we all strive to live our lives with the pure heart of Mata Shabri, offering whatever we have with love and devotion, just as Lord Ram accepted her humble offering. Jai Gurudev, today we are joined by an esteemed officer from the Vedic Dharma Sansthan and a distinguished expert from the art of living, both of whom will help us delve into one of the most significant and heartwarming events in the Ramayana, the meeting of Lord Ram and Lakshman with Mata Shabri. This encounter holds deep spiritual and philosophical significance, not only within the context of the Ramayana but also for its timeless teachings about devotion, humility, and divine grace. Let's begin by exploring who Mata Shabri was and why she holds such an important place in the Ramayana. Jai Gurudev. Mata Shabri's story is indeed a profound one. She is often described as a humble tribal woman living in the forests of ancient India. Though she belonged to a lower caste, her devotion to Lord Ram was boundless. Shabri is an embodiment of bhakti or devotion, and her life's journey symbolizes the idea that true devotion is not about external factors, just as such as social status, wealth, or formal rituals, but rather the sincerity of one's heart. Her role in the Ramayana is significant because it reveals that the grace of the divine is available to all, irrespective of their background or circumstances. Shabari had spent many years in penance and waiting for the arrival of Lord Ram, hoping to meet him one day. Her life is a model of unshakable faith and pure devotion. The story is emblematic of the concept of surrender, where the devotee offers everything, even the smallest of things, with deep love and devotion, which is then accepted by the divine. Yes, Mata Shabri's life teaches us a fundamental lesson in spiritual practice. That devotion is not confined to grand gestures but can be found in the simplicity of heart. In the art of living philosophy, we emphasize that true spirituality does not rely on external displays of devotion but on the purity of the inner experience. Shabri's devotion was raw and unadulterated by the trappings of worldly desires. The story teaches us that the path to the divine is accessible to all, regardless of their social standing or material wealth. Mata Shabri's devotion can be compared to the deeper principles we teach in the Art of Living programs, such as the emphasis on being authentic and free from the ego. True devotion, like Shabri's, is an expression of one's deep connection to the divine within. Thank you for those insights. Now, let's move on to the event that forms the heart of our discussion today, the meeting of Lord Ram and Lakshman with Mata Shabri. Could you walk us through the moment of their encounter and elaborate on the significance of their conversation? The meeting of Lord Ram and Lakshman with Mata Shabri occurs when Ram, during his exile, wanders into the forest in search of his abducted wife Sita. During this journey, he enters the hermitage of Shabri. Now, what makes this meeting unique is the setting itself. Shabri's humble abode in the forest, far from the palace and the society's norms, represents purity and simplicity free from material attachments. This is a significant contrast to the more structured environments where the great kings and warriors usually meet their followers. When Ram and Lakshman arrive, Mata Shabri is overwhelmed with joy. She had been waiting for this moment for many years, knowing in her heart that Lord Ram would one day come to her. Despite the fact that she was from a lower social standing, her heart was full of devotion, and this is what made her so special in the eyes of the Lord. Shabri invites Lord Ram into her humble hut, offering him berries she had collected. There is a remarkable detail in the story. Before offering these berries to Ram, she tasted them to ensure that they were sweet. In one version of the Ramayana, Shabri even tested each berry by biting into it, ensuring it was not bitter offering before offering it to the Lord. To some, this act might seem small or even trivial, but it carries profound spiritual symbolism. What is noteworthy is that despite the fact that these berries were not the most perfect or the most sumptuous, Lord Ram graciously accepts them. His acceptance of these imperfect berries signifies that what matters in the eyes of the divine is not the outward form of an offering, but the love and devotion with which it is given. Indeed, this moment is rich with teachings. The act of tasting the berry shows us that Shabri did not offer what was simply available, but what she had ensured was perfect for the Lord. She was offering the best of what she had with pure love, and this is a beautiful example of the principle of sattvic offering. In our teachings, we often say that the offering does not have to be grand, but it should be sincere, free from ego, and filled with devotion. When Lord Ram accepted these berries, despite their seemingly imperfect nature, he was acknowledging the purity of Shabri's heart. This act goes beyond the ritualistic offerings, those that are done out of duty or expectation, and points towards the authenticity of devotion. This is a concept that aligns closely with the teachings of the Art of Living, where we encourage individuals to offer their actions, thoughts, and words as a form of prayer done with love and humility. This is also reflected in the Sudarshan Kriya technique, which helps us to purify our hearts and minds, allowing us to engage in life with the sincerity and love that Shabari embodied. That's a powerful interpretation. Could you elaborate more on the conversation between Lord Ram and Mata Shabri? And what did they speak about? And what lessons can we draw from their exchange? The conversation between Lord Ram and Shabri is not only about the exchange of words, but also about the exchange of energies. Ram's divine presence in Shabri's life was itself the answer to her lifelong prayers. When they meet, Ram, with the deep understanding of Shabri's devotion, says that her faith has purified her and that she is blessed to have received him as her guest. Ram's words to her are not merely praises, but an acknowledgement of the power of bhakti or devotion that transcends social, material, and even ritualistic boundaries. Ram's response to Shabri also speaks about the nature of divine grace. He tells her that her devotion has earned her the divine presence in her life. This is significant because it demonstrates that the Lord does not come to the perfect or the powerful, but to those who are open, humble, and pure hearted. Ram's acceptance of the berries and his blessings to Shabri emphasize that the purity of one's devotion is what matters most, not one's material circumstances. Yes, and this moment in the Ramayana is a living testament to the transformative power of love and devotion. Lord Ram's acceptance of Shabri's offering teaches us to go beyond superficial judgments. This aligns with a central concept in the Art of Living, that our actions, when performed with love, can connect us to the divine. The conversation between Ram and Shabri is a profound reminder that the divine sees only the purity of the heart, not outward appearances. One key point that comes to mind is how we in the modern world often focus on material wealth or external recognition. The teachings of Lord Ram, as seen in this interaction, encourages us to shift our focus inward. It's not about what we offer to the world, but what we offer to the divine within ourselves. Ram's acceptance of Shabri's berries, despite their imperfection, highlights that the divine looks beyond the surface recognizing the intent and love behind an offering. This lesson is powerful for anyone on a spiritual journey today, whether in the context of our personal practice, work, or relationships. It's about offering ourselves authentically without seeking external validation and trusting that the divine recognizes the purity of our intentions. What do you think this encounter between Lord Ram and Shabri tells us about the idea of service and humility? How can we apply this in our lives? This encounter teaches us that service is not about grandiosity or recognition, but about humility and love. Shabri's life was not about seeking recognition, it was about offering her love to the divine. However simple or imperfect that offering may have seemed, in a world where people often seek external validation, this story reminds us that true service comes from a place of humility and sincerity. The most powerful acts of service are often those that go unnoticed by the world but are seen by the divine. Yes, this principle of service with humility is central in the art of living as well. When we serve with a pure heart, without expecting in anything in return or seeking recognition, we align ourselves with the true nature of service. This service, whether it's through a small act of kindness or in the way we approach our spiritual practices, is an offering to the divine. It is through such actions that we experience the deep inner peace and joy that Shabri must have felt when she finally met Lord Ram. Thank you both for such an enlightening conversation. The meeting of Lord Ram, Lakshman, and Mata Shabri is not just an event in the Ramayana but a timeless teaching on devotion, humility, and divine grace. I'm sure our listeners will carry forward these lessons in their own lives. Jai Gurudev. Jai Gurudev, welcome to this insightful session where we explore one of the most spiritually profound encounters in the Ramayana, the meeting of Lord Ram and Lakshman with Mata Shabri. We are joined today by an esteemed officer from the Vedic Dhamma Sansthan and an expert from the art of living. Together, we will delve into the layers of meaning behind this momentous event, analyzing the conversation between Lord Ram and Mata Shabri and its deeper spiritual significance. Let's begin with an overview of who Mata Shabri was and why her story is so significant in the Ramayana. Jai Gurudev, thank you for having me. Mata Shabri is one of the most revered characters in the Ramayana. Though she is often overlooked in popular narratives, she was an elderly woman belonging to a lower caste and lived in the forest, leading a simple and humble life. Shabri's devotion to Lord Ram is extraordinary because she embodies the very essence of true devotion, bhakti, which is pure and without expectation. And a story teaches us that devotion is not bound by one's social standing, wealth, or even rituals, but by the sincerity and purity of the heart. A life represents the eternal truth that devotion is a universal path that transcends all worldly barriers. Her long years of penance and yearning for the darshan of Lord Ram, while living a life of extreme simplicity, reflect a profound spiritual message that no matter one's external circumstances, divine grace is accessible to all who approach with sincerity. Yes, Mata Shabri's story also resonates with many of the teachings from the Art of Living. The concept of bhakti is central to the Art of Living philosophy, which emphasizes devotion and connection to the divine. What is most striking about Shabri is her authenticity. Her love and devotion were genuine and selfless. She didn't wait for material rewards. Her entire focus was on serving Lord Ram with whatever little she had, including the very simple act of offering berries. This act of devotion and humility, where she tasted the berries to ensure they were sweet before offering them to Ram, reflects the spirit of service and attention to detail. In art of living practices, we are taught to bring such sincerity into our meditation and daily practices, ensuring that each moment is a heartfelt offering to the divine within us and around us. Absolutely. The theme of true devotion resonates deeply in this story. Now let's focus on the meeting between Lord Ram, Lakshman, and Mata Shabri. This moment has captured the imagination of many spiritual seekers. Could you share with us the details of this meeting and its profound significance? The meeting of Lord Ram and Lakshman with Mata Shabri occurs in a remote part of the forest during Lord Ram's exile. Ram and Lakshman, on their journey to find Sita, arrive at Shabri's hut. Mata Shabri, overwhelmed with joy at the prospect of meeting Lord Ram, welcomes them into her humble dwelling. What strikes one immediately about this meeting is the setting. While Ram is a prince and Lakshman is his loyal brother, their encounter with Shabri, a humble tribal woman, signifies that divine grace is not determined by social status, wealth, or external trappings. Shabri's simplicity and love were her true offerings to Ram, and she was blessed to receive him. The details of the meeting are important too. When Shabri offers Ram the berries, she makes sure that they are sweet, having tasted them herself. In one version of the story, she tests every berry before offering it, ensuring that it is sweet and ripe. This act of tasting the berries though seemingly small and even trivial, holds great significance. It reflects a deep attentiveness in her devotion. She didn't just offer the Lord any fruit, she gave him what she considered the best, though it was simple and humble. Lord Ram, upon receiving the berries, graciously accepts them, demonstrating the essence of bhakti. His acceptance of the imperfect berries signifies that true devotion comes from the heart, not from material perfection. This moment is a powerful lesson. It's not the external offering that matters, but the sincerity and purity of the devotion behind it. Yes, and this act of offering by Shabri speaks volumes about the depth of her love for Lord Ram. From an art living perspective, Shabri's devotion represents the essence of bhakti, a devotion that is free from ego and expectation. In the world today, many people engage in religious practices seeking recognition or reward, but the devotion that Shabri exemplifies is one where the heart is surrendered completely without any desire for return. Her action is an expression of her deep love, not just a ritual. Lord Ram's acceptance of the berries, despite their imperfection, teaches us an essential truth about spiritual practice. The divine does not look for perfection in the external, but for the purity of the heart. This is why the art of living encourages people to engage in their practices with sincerity and purity without comparing or measuring their progress. Every prayer, every offering, no matter how small or imperfect, is valued if it is made with love and devotion. That's a beautiful interpretation. Now let's discuss the conversation between Lord Ram and Mata Shabri. What was said during their meeting and how do these words carry deeper meaning for us today? The conversation between Lord Ram and Mata Shabri is simple yet profound. After receiving the berries, Lord Ram acknowledges Shabri's devotion. He tells her that her devotion has purified her heart and that she has truly earned the grace of the divine. He reassures her that her long years of penance and waiting were not in vain, as they have led to this moment of divine darshan. Ram's words to Shabri are a direct recognition of the purity of her heart. He acknowledges that she, though of humble origins, has achieved a high level of spiritual realization because her devotion was undiluted by worldly desires. Ram's acceptance of her offering is symbolic. He accepts the devotion of the humble, the weak, and the lowly, showing that spiritual greatness is not determined by one's external status but by the purity of one's devotion. This conversation also highlights the power of grace. Mata Shabri, in her simplicity and devotion, did not need to perform elaborate rituals or seek approval from society to earn the divine's grace. The grace of Lord was always with her, waiting to be revealed at the right moment. In the art of living tradition, we often speak of grace as an inner experience, a moment when everything aligns and we feel the presence of the divine in our hearts. For Shabri, the divine presence came in the form of Lord Ram, who not only accepted her offering but also acknowledged the purity of her heart. This is a reminder to us all that grace does not come from external validation but from the purity within us. Lord Ram's words to Shabri also reflect the principle of surrender, the idea that when we surrender our ego, our desires, and a sense of control, we open ourselves to divine grace. Shabri's story is a powerful reminder that the divine is always available to us, but it is up to us to open our hearts and approach with love and devotion, just as Shabri did. How can we apply the teachings from this encounter in our own lives, and what practical lessons can we take away from the humility and devotion of Mata Shabri and the acceptance by Lord Ram? The teachings from this encounter have a timeless and universal message. First and foremost, it teaches us that true devotion does not depend on external factors such as wealth, social status, or ritual perfection. It is about the purity and sincerity of the heart in our own lives. We can practice this by offering our actions, thoughts, and words with love without expecting anything in return. Service in its truest form is about doing things with devotion, not for recognition. Another lesson is that the divine is always with us even when we may not see it. Like Shabri, we may sometimes feel that our efforts are unnoticed or unimportant, but the divine is aware of our intentions and sees the love we put into every action. From the art of living perspective, the essence of this story lies in the concept of selfless devotion and surrender. In a fast paced, achievement driven world, it is easy to get caught up in seeking validation from external sources, whether that's from others or from the results of our actions. However, Shabri's story teaches us that true fulfillment comes from within, from a heart that is pure and devoted. In our daily lives, we can practice this by doing everything with love, whether we are serving others, working, or meditating. Additionally, Shabri's patience in waiting for Lord Ram for years teaches us the importance of patience and perseverance in our spiritual journey. Sometimes the results are not immediate, but the key is to continue with faith and devotion, knowing that the divine will reveal itself in due course. Thank you for such an enlightening discussion. The meeting between Lord Ram and Mata Shabari is a profound reminder of the power of true devotion, humility, and grace. It teaches us that no matter where we are in life, the divine's presence is always accessible to those who approach with sincerity and love. Jai Gurudev.